Welcome to the Bold Money Revolution podcast. This is your source for straight talking, no fluff, business and high performance conversations that add real depth and value to the way bold leaders live, work, and thrive. I'm your host, Tara Newman. I'm here to show you how to optimize your performance as a leader so that you can grow a business that is profit-rich, efficient, and allows you to generate real, tangible wealth for yourself and others. We are here to help you lead with your values, to perform without overwhelm and burnout, and to do your most important work in the world. Hey there. Welcome to the Bold Money Revolution podcast. I'm your host, Tara Newman. And today we are going to have an honest, straightforward chat that I don't think a lot of people are having. And we are going to have it with none other than my bestie, Josh Kreitzman. Hey, Josh.
Oh, hey. Happy to be here.
So I want to set this up because you and I were actually talking about this last week. So I want to share my relationship with Josh and how we had the idea to have this conversation. And this is not an interview. I'm not interviewing Josh. Sometimes I interview people. This is just Josh and I, you're grabbing coffee with us, or picture yourself on a walk on a trail with us, or in my garage gym working out, because that's usually where we're all hanging out, Josh and my husband, John, and I. But last week, Josh and I went on a walk, and I was really frustrated just listening to some really painful stories from business owners. I don't always peddle in the fun parts of business. It's not always rainbows and unicorns, either with my clients or with my business community or with people who book calls with me. Sometimes we're talking about really painful, upsetting, scary, vulnerable things. And I always say it takes a toll on me. And so I was having this conversation with Josh and I was super frustrated. And I'm I feel like we're not talking about the hard things in business. And you agreed.
Yeah, I felt like it was, we had this conversation where you and I were both frustrated with certain things that were going on. And maybe there was a misunderstanding of what our clients were looking for. And ultimately, it all came down to the fact that either clients or friends were getting themselves into trouble by not heeding advice that they were getting professionally, or they weren't even asking for advice. They were just jumping headlong into something without even questioning whether or not this was legally or ethically the right thing to do. And I felt like we were getting to the point where we were getting heated, and I think we were in agreement, and we just said, you know what, we need to talk about this with other business owners and get the word out, because it's frustrating for me. It's frustrating for a lot of people when you either give advice or ask for advice and it's ignored or not followed. But not only that, it just no procedures are ever put into place to mitigate those problems even the next time.
So I want to share, first of all, my frustration isn't anger. It's frustration because I genuinely believe that it doesn't have to be this hard. And that I have a lot of experience and knowledge and expertise that can save people so much pain and money and frustrations of their own. And I think that, I say this a lot, I think that we've led people to believe that anybody can be an entrepreneur or run a business or be self-employed, whatever label you want to put on what you're doing. And that is just really, really untrue. And it's causing so much pain and harm. You come from a long line of small business owners. I come from a long line of small business owners. And the reality is that my father was self-employed because he was unemployable. He didn't have an other option for employment. And now we've made self-employment a fad. And it's become entrepreneurship has become a part of our pop culture in a way. And it has some really dire consequences. And listen, if at the end of this episode, Josh and I were talking about this when we were in my garage, if at the end of this episode, you either say, I'm out, I don't want to do this, or I'm all in, let's go. That is a really good outcome from this podcast, because what I think you're going to hear us say, I'm summarizing before we even get there, Josh, is there's no dabbling.
Right. There's no toe in the water.
There's like, unless this is like a side hustle for you and you have another source of income coming in, we cannot be dabbling. We need to be all in, invested, on board, doing the things, committed. And that takes a lot of energy and it takes its toll. So first, before we even get into the conversation, Josh, I want to share our relationship. You are my best friend. You are my husband's best friend. You were my friend first. I'm sharing you with him. I just want to. And Josh is smart enough not to pick his favorite Newman because he'll piss off four of us. Because
Alistair is my favorite Newman. Let's just be clear.
Because we all love Josh, including my parents. And so we're great friends. We became friends because I coached Josh. We met at a local networking event. Josh hired me to coach him. Then I, shortly after that, hired Josh to be my CFO. So we have a very enmeshed relationship. I think we improv together.
Right. But before that, during COVID, or, as COVID was lightening, when we weren't allowed to go back to gyms, I was invited to go to your house to work out and in your garage. And pretty much every week for the last 3 years or so, we've seen each other Saturday or Sunday.
Yep.
If not both days, or one day a week.
Right.
Minimum.
So yeah, it's rare that we go a week without seeing each other. And it would be even more rare if we went a day without talking.
Yeah. Oh, that's definitely true. Whether it's sending Twitter craziness or, articles, sharing financial information.
Yeah. Josh is on my top 3 emergency contacts. Depending on what the emergency is, Josh might be contacted first or last.
I know that if I get a phone call from Tara, that there's a problem.
He's picking up. He's nervous. If his phone rings and it's me, it's like 911.
Oh yeah. It's always a text. So if I get a phone call from Tara, it's somebody's stuck in some sort of storage facility inside the gate.
Hey, whatever.
That's very specific. That's a very specific instance.
Yeah. And so I just, I want to share how Josh has helped me as my CFO. And I'm not going to do this any near justice, but the other day I was running a calculation and I sent him a text and I said, conservatively, I think you've saved me 5% of my gross revenue every year.
Yeah, but that's pretty true. Yeah.
Yeah, pretty true. But really what's more than that is that the compounding effect of saving 5% on your gross revenue year after year, if you take that, especially if you take that 5% and you invest it.
Right. And that's, I think, where you've helped me a lot too. Tara is an excellent detail-oriented researcher. And not only has she helped me over the last 5 years become a completely different person personally in my life and, change my family's life as well. I can't even overstate the impact that Tara's, meeting with Tara the times we've met, speaking with her, if I have an issue, I call or text and we talk through it, whether it's business or personal or, any of the above, especially lately with finances and talking about selling, investing for the future, investing for our families, talking about where to best put our saved income.
In this economy.
Right. In this crazy world where, interest rates are crazy. Banks are looking for money. Everybody's looking for money. I can't really oversell the impact that Tara's had for me. So it's really a mutually beneficial arrangement that we have. And it just happens to be that we're very close friends. It's not just a business relationship. So
what I think is interesting is we both are experts in money, but have slightly different skill sets. So I couldn't do what I do with money without you. And, you can say how you feel about that, vice versa. But, for example, a lot of making money and investing money does come down to having a solid tax strategy and understanding what is copacetic. The IRS has a very complicated guidelines, pages and pages and how many pages?
Oh God, uncountable pages.
Uncountable pages. And, Josh is very well researched and diligent in his area of expertise in making sure that, proper regulation is followed, that you are taking advantage of every opportunity you have as a small business owner in terms of your taxes, and that when you submit your paperwork to the government, that it is in order and does not come back questioned or called into question. And those are really important things. And yet they're different than cash flow management, the psychology of money, which he also understands, but really that's my real area of expertise. And, it's different and it overlaps is what I'm gonna say. And, you had such a good opportunity when we were working together where we went through your P&L, and having a second set of eyes made a huge difference for you.
Yeah, I mean, that whole conversation that you and I had when you were showing me Profit First and you were going through the numbers with me, even though I understand numbers, I'm, like I said, I'm an accountant, I'm a CPA, but just getting that fresh look from a different perspective made a whole huge amount of difference, where I ended up saving roughly $100,000 in a year.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, I don't have the benefit right now of saving that money and putting it into investments, but it's helping me pay down a loan that I took out. And, that is
Because you bought a business. You took out a loan because you bought a business, which was 4 years in the making, that we worked together.
That we tirelessly every week working on how to get it settled, how to put everything into
emotionally,
place.
Mentally, strategically getting you to the point to really buy that business and step in and to transition really quickly.
Right. And we were ready, because I'm working with you for the 4 years, there wasn't a long learning curve for me to transition to the person who was general manager, employee, to the owner, the guy, the head honcho, whatever you want to call me. I prefer Big Cheese, but whatever you want to say.
Big Cheese.
Head honcho, Big Cheese, Grand Poobah. Actually, I have on my tax return Grand Poobah. I don't know if you know, on Tara's tax return, where it asks for her job description, I put leader of leaders. I don't know if she's ever noticed that, but for 4 years, that's what it says on
That's
there.
My job description, leader of leaders. So, I think this is actually winding its way really well into some of this conversation that I want to have, because a lot of times I do focus on normalizing the fact that business ownership is hard. It is. And we're going to talk about the constraints and the trade-offs that you make when you're a business owner. But first, I want to start with the benefits, because there are tremendous benefits to being a business owner. And one of them, actually, in my opinion, happens to be taxes.
Well, there's a lot of flexibility.
Disagree?
No, I agree. There's a lot of flexibility that you have when it comes to expenses, when it comes to making those types of decisions on how to handle taxes. When you're an employee of a business, it's pretty straightforward. You get a W-2, taxes come out of the W-2, you get a net check, you take that W-2, you take it to your accountant, or you use TurboTax or whatever it is that you do, and they pretty much plug the numbers in. You either owe or you get money back. That's it. There's really not much to do there. But when you're a business owner, there's a lot of flexibility that you can have. So that is definitely a benefit, where we can talk about entity choice, which affects your taxable income.
So whether or not you're an LLC, an S corp, or don't just go and honestly don't please don't go and randomly choose what you're going to be. Speak to a professional and ask them and weigh the pros and cons to each one. So just right out of the gate, talking to an expert on that can set you up to really benefit.
And, a lot of times you get a lot of opinions from non-professionals. Mm-hmm. I know my favorite place to get bad advice is TikTok.
You and I have some takedowns on that.
My favorite thing to do on TikTok is to find people giving out terrible advice that will get you sent to jail.
And let them know they're going to get sent to jail.
Let them know that if they continue that in that path, that the FBI knocking on their door is not that far away. So it's pretty amazing to me what I get as far as, the younger generation who comes to me and wants to open up an LLC and do all these, hey, I'm going to put my house in an LLC. So this way I can charge myself rent and then I can do all these things because that's what the Grandmaster Tax Flasher on TikTok said. And I'm like listening to this going, what are you, out of your mind?
There's actually
so many problems to that.
There was a study done, and that is very generational, that when you look at where different generations are getting their financial information from, like our generation is not getting our financial information from TikTok, but like millennials are more like YouTube. Younger millennials and Gen Z are like very, very heavily skewed toward getting their financial information on TikTok, which is terrifying.
That's and honestly, we're 40, Tara and I are in our 40s, and where we get our tax advice from is almost worse because we get our tax advice from random people that we happen to meet in different events or places. And I don't know if that's worse or better, but it's
local networking.
Yeah, I can't tell you how many times I get a call saying, oh, I just talked to so-and-so and they said I should do this with my business. Meanwhile, that person who gave the advice knows nothing about them, knows nothing about their family situation. And so to give that kind of advice without knowing truly what's going on in their world is negligent at best.
Yeah.
Which is why, it's helpful that, Tara and I happen to have a unique relationship when it comes to business, and me being a CPA and Tara is an entrepreneur who's doing all of these things. You don't have to, be attached to the hip with your CPA or your business advisor, but certainly having an open line of communication where you feel okay enough. That's not the word I'm looking for, but where you feel
safe,
good enough that you can call them on a weekly basis and say, hey, I need some advice on this. What's your thoughts? Like, who should I talk to? And most of the time when someone calls me or Tara calls me, my first reaction is, or one of my reactions could be, you need to call this other professional who can help you with that. And I remember there was one time you called me and said there was a problem. You received a letter in the mail and it was some sort of issue. And my reaction was, call an attorney. There's no reason to call me. It's nice that you called me. And
so what happened? What happened was we were waiting for a C of O on work we did in the yard, and I don't know what happened. There was a crossing communication, and they thought we were out of compliance or whatever. They send this hyperbolic letter, not from the town, but just from the state of New York. And it was addressed the state of New York versus Tara Newman. And it was threatening to take me to fucking jail with no details. So, and John was sick and sleeping in bed. And I was at the front door with the mail. And instead of waking John up and being like, what the heck is this about? Are we going to jail? What do we do? I was literally like, what law did I possibly break? I couldn't even. So I called Josh and I'm like, I have a letter here. And he's like, call an attorney. I'm like, okay, once I catch my breath, I'm calling the attorney.
And let's say this story from my perspective is, here I am. It's a Saturday morning. I'm taking my kids to see a show in New York City. I think we were going to see Beetlejuice the musical. And I get a call from Tara and I look at my wife and I say, if Tara's calling me, someone's dead. and I'm like, if you don't mind, I will answer this. And so I answer it, and that was what I heard. And it was like, oh, okay, no one's dead. We're good. Just call an attorney. But again, a lot of times people get those letters and they never call the person they trust or discuss it, and then they react to it. They start calling the prosecutor or they start calling the court, and they start making a huge mess of something that could easily be resolved if you just call the right person.
So no joke, I was having a panic attack, like could not breathe. Like I'm literally looking at a letter that I cannot figure out what crime I committed. And so I hung up with Josh and I did call the attorney, and she did like a super quick search. I could hear her. She's like clacking away on her keyboard. She's like, I think this is something with the town and your property. I was like, oh, right. Okay. Okay. Deep breaths, deep breaths. And then John woke up and I'm like, okay, so we're not going to jail, but there's this thing that's happening. And of course he knew about it. And he's like, oh yeah, I'm working that out. Why didn't you just ask me? And I'm like, because you were half dead in bed. Like, that's why, but whatever. Fine.
But it's also you know what? If you didn't call, right, and then you start responding to the state or doing things, then all of a sudden hours or days later, John or someone gets back to you and goes, hey, did you ever get something from New York State? We were waiting on it. And you go, oh my God, I've now sued the city. I've done all these things. I've called them multiple times. They have all this information they didn't need. And now a whole problem has been created because of that. Meanwhile, if you would have just discussed it with the correct people and not panicked. Now, I'm not saying you did this, but I'm saying that you didn't panic and you did the right thing.
Okay, so let's move off the fact that I was panicking.
No. I didn't. I'm saying that you weren't panicking. And
Moving on. Benefits of working for yourself, benefits of being self-employed, benefits of being a small business owner was that Josh and I the other day had a no bones day.
No bones day is the best day.
Right? So like you have more autonomy, you have more agency in how you work, in who you work with, which in my opinion is the most important aspect of running your business, is getting the who right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean,
because Josh's life has been made quite miserable working with the wrong who's.
Oh yeah. Well, I think that goes without saying for anyone, where you pick the wrong people to work with and then you end up.
If you're like, and I want to burn down my business mode, I would check who you're working with before you burn anything down. Benefits, I think that it is the greatest economic play. I still think that it's the greatest economic play to be a small business owner and to be self-employed, even if it comes with additional risk. I think that the reward is 100% there when you know how to manage your money and when you know what you're doing with your money.
Well, I'm going to interrupt and say there are, I will say, yes, I agree that being a business owner and doing this on, for ourselves gives you a ton of freedom. Although I do know a lot of people that find freedom in just doing the 9 to 5 and being an employee. They just get paid for what they do. They go home at night. They don't have to worry about liabilities. They don't have to worry about where food's coming from the next day. They don't care. They don't want to worry about those things.
Right. So I think this really goes back to like whether or not you're employable. Do you want to go and work for somebody else or not? And if the answer is no, I don't want to work for somebody else, then you got to go all in.
Yeah.
Then we can't dabble.
A perfect example is my wife, Phyllis, who she's an incredible sewer. She can make costumes. She can create all of these things for theater, she can make pillows, she can make chair cushions. And we've talked multiple times about her running her own business. And there are people that offered her a lot of money to make these things, curtains and pillows and chairs and all of these things. And her response was, no, I don't even know where to start. Like, I will do it for friends. I will do it casually, but oh my God, to like go out and sell and make money, and people were handing her money and she still didn't want to do it.
Yeah.
So I think it just takes a certain mentality.
It does.
To be in business for yourself and to have that, that gut. There's a Yiddish word that I'm not thinking of, but
chutzpah.
Chutzpah, that's the good word.
Chutzpah, right? And I think that's true. I think, it comes down to your personality and how and what you want your lifestyle to look like, and how this is really a game of Small business ownership is really a game of how well can you process stress and pressure.
Yeah. I mean, I think that, you got to be in it to win it. You can't be halfway. There's no half measures. And it's okay if things fail. It's okay if things don't go your way. It's just that you have to really pick yourself up. I mean, I think people who are good at accepting rejection and moving on are a great example of people who are ready to be working for themselves or want to work for themselves. I mean, when I was auditioning, when I was an actor, I was rejected 17,000 times a day. So at this point, if someone says they don't want to work with me, I'm upset about it for a few minutes and then I move on because there's something else I need to be doing rather than feeling bad for myself. So I really think that
I think we get a false view of what small business ownership looks like with the internet and social media, whether it's Adam Newman from WeWork, whether it's Sam Bankman-Fried with FTX, whether it's Elizabeth Holmes from Theranos, whether it's the random rogue web celeb on Instagram or the person who looks like they're crushing it on TikTok. The other night, last weekend, I heard John talking, which is really shocking to hear my husband speak because he's so silent. But no, I'm kidding. But it was a Saturday night. It was 7 p.m. and he was on his phone. And the only way that he was going to be speaking to somebody on the phone is if it was business related. So at 7 p.m. on Saturday night, like my body immediately tensed up because who talks business at 7 p.m. on Saturday night unless there's a problem, right? Unless something is happening. And it's not all this laptop lifestyle where you, yes, you have freedom and you have more schedule freedom, but you're also going to pick up the phone at 7:00 at night if you have to. Or, he woke up the other morning and he's like, oh my gosh, like I've got guys headed to this facility and I don't think they know like the first step that they need to take. I'm simplifying, right? And he's like, he shot out of bed to make sure that he got a text off. There have been times where he's run a third shift in manufacturing and our phone's ringing at 2 a.m. because the production is stopped because somebody has a question about, something on the line or,
I think the internet has done two things. One, I think this is something first thing I'll say is I really do believe that from the 80s on that business has become more efficient when it comes to communication through the use of now, of course, the internet, but email, through phones, usage of phone, fax machines, internet. As every time communication becomes simpler or easier, it lowers the barrier to entry to these businesses. So what used to be something that you would need a credential for, right? Something that people would never talk to somebody who was not credentialed. Now, I believe that because of the ease of communication and the ease of getting information out there to the public, the barrier to entry to these businesses, to certain businesses, has been lowered. So what I mean by that is, let's take social media content, for example. Back in the 90s, I can only speak to the 90s because that's when I grew up, but back in the 90s, I would say if you wanted to be in advertising or marketing, you had to be credentialed. You needed to have education. You needed to go to college for this. You couldn't just be a smart person who knew how to make code, who knew how to draw. You wouldn't even be looked at if you didn't go through the certain steps that needed to be tackled. Very rarely could a person just show up at an advertising agency and say, I'm the greatest thing you've ever seen, hire me. You would have to go through years of schooling and networking to get to where you needed to be. And now you're talking about a world where people believe, and I only say believe because some of it's true and some of it isn't, but people believe that if I'm good at SEO or I understand how social media marketing works, I don't need to be credentialed at all. I just need to be the loudest person on Instagram in order for people to recognize that. And I get recognized for those things because I'm throwing stuff out there, I'm the best one at throwing things out there. But that doesn't necessarily mean I understand business psychology or I understand how people think. I'm just going on my intuition, but the barrier to the entry of the market is so
Yeah.
low. I don't need credentials. But the reason why things fail is because it's all surface level and no substance. And when we're in this recessive market, when we're in a market now where things are tight, recession is hitting, you're starting to see all of these influencers, people that are on Instagram touting social media marketing are slowly starting to disappear or get more desperate because the emperor has no clothes. And they don't know the tried and true methods to rely on in the times of crisis. They only
Expertise
know
still matters.
expertise still matters.
Expertise matters more now than ever before in a down economy. But you brought that up, so I want to talk about that for a second. What are you seeing in the local business community among clients? Not sharing anything personal or anything like that, but like, what are you seeing as the challenges right now as we're navigating like yet another year of uncertainty? Because let's be clear, you and I actually did a podcast probably March, April of 2020 when we talked about leading during uncertain times, and things have not clarified much in the last 3 years. But now we're just more exhausted by it. We're more fatigued by the uncertainty. So what are you seeing happen? What are the challenges that you're seeing?
So I'm seeing a lot of generational issues. And when I say generational issues, I mean the gap between the people who've been in business in their late 50s, early 60s at this point, and the people who are in business in their late 20s, early 30s. The knowledge gap of technology is great. And what I mean by that is that the ones who are older are having a really hard time letting go of the old way pre-COVID.
Mm-hmm.
They're having a really hard time acknowledging the fact that
things have changed.
Things are different, that we don't have to meet in person. We don't have to do all these things face to face. Although the thing that the people that are in their late 20s and early 30s are realizing, and I'm just generalizing about ages, but what I think they're realizing is that face to face is the best way to still make a sale.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And so, it can't always be through email or the internet. Maybe during COVID, it was, hey, you're paying attention to me in an email, I'll use you. But that shine is off that apple at this point. There needs to be more substance behind what you're proposing. And, face-to-face contact is still important, but it's not the end all be all. And so there's a balance that needs to be found, I think, here, as well as a life balance. I mean, I will speak from my personal experience that I am having intense days, but I'm tired by 5 p.m. Like, I'm done. Like, if I start doing intense work by 11:30, 12 and 12 noon, I get 4 to 5 hours and then that's it.
Yeah.
I mean,
I'm only working about 4 hours a day.
And I wish, I look back and I think I texted this to you the other day or this morning. I was in bed at 9:00 and I said, I don't understand how I used to get up at 8 and be at work or be at a client by 8:45, 9 a.m. Like, that's a struggle.
Yeah,
I don't even want to get out of bed.
Our capacity has greatly changed. And I'm not sure if our expectations have caught up with what our actual capacity is right now, and how and the trade-offs that we might need to be making to accommodate what our capacity is for our physical health and our mental health. I know that I'm seeing a lot of like really concerning mental health issues around small business owners.
And I think a lot of that comes from the stress of the economy that we're in, the uncertainty of which government do we have today, whether it's Republican run or Democrat run or run jointly. It's like Jekyll and Hyde. We don't know from one day to the next. Are we getting the government that's shooting down balloons over North Carolina? Are we getting the government that can't elect a Speaker of the House? Or are we getting the government that's covering up a train wreck in Ohio that's now, burning poisonous gas into the air? Which government are we dealing with?
Yeah. Yeah.
And those are all three things that happened in the last month and a half.
Yeah. We're living in distracted, uncertain times. And I think, people are either shutting down completely and not making any decisions, or they're making very rash decisions.
Yeah, and I think that those rash decisions, or not making a decision, but especially the rash or quick decisions, are coming from a place of everything's moving so quickly that if I don't make that decision, then it'll pass me by. And I don't know if things are moving that fast. I think that's just how we feel about it.
We get to be on our own time frame.
Yeah.
Right. But like, not making a decision is not being on a time frame. Like, avoidance is not being on a time frame. And making a rash decision where you're operating from fear or scarcity or anxiety is also not being on your time frame. That's being on anxiety's time frame and being on pain's time frame, where you're making a decision just to get out of the pain of the moment versus making a decision that is strategic and grounded in some expertise. And so I want to talk about, it's interesting. I think there are benefits. We talked about the benefits to working for yourself, and you made a really good point that these benefits exist if you were working for somebody else, right? And that it's a matter of personality. And so, the reality is that when you're a small business owner or whatever you call yourself, I talk about it in terms of like earning income independent of an employer. There's constraints. There are trade-offs. Like, nothing is without trade-off.
I think trade-offs, opportunity cost, are the two most important words that we could be using right now. Those are the perfect words. And I think that as business owners, we have a really difficult time understanding what that means. And what I mean to say about that is that a lot of times we make decisions as a business owner, but we don't fully grasp the long-term effect of that decision, or we don't take the time to think about what is it that we're giving up when we devote our energy or time or capital towards that decision. What are we not getting?
Can you give me some real life examples that maybe you're seeing?
So a perfect example is I have a person that I'm helping right now who's starting a business, and they're building it, they're opening it, and they needed money.
Okay, so this is a brick and mortar.
Capital. It's a brick and mortar. It's a restaurant.
Okay.
And they needed money, and they turned to someone who, as an investor, could provide the capital they needed to finish the building out of the restaurant.
Nothing wrong with that. We want to be using other people's capital.
100%, except no operating agreement, no loan agreement, no shareholders agreement. And so no one quite understood what the acceptance of that money meant. The original owner received the money, used it to build out the restaurant, but the investor didn't know what they were getting. So you have two sides now to this deal. One where the investor thought, hey, I'm going to be 50-50 owner with you. And the owner who received the money said, no, this is a loan that I'm going to pay back.
No ownership.
Mm-hmm. And so a month into this, when they discussed what the ownership structure of this business looked like, they couldn't agree. Who has what? Who owns what? Who is responsible for what? How does it work? How do they get paid back? How does anything work? And so all of this decision to accept this money without having any real backup documentation on or boundary on what this money represents in the business is an opportunity cost spent, because this person basically accepted money, couldn't figure out what to do with it as far as equity or debt.
I've done this. It's very expensive.
So the opportunity cost or the economic cost to this problem is now they're spending lots of money with lawyers, going back to what they should have done 2 months earlier, and hashing it out with attorneys.
Yeah, I want to talk about this for a second, because that's obviously a scary scenario for the person who's experiencing it, and really not any fun, speaking as someone who has had this experience. And what I want to normalize, because I think this is where we get screwed up in our heads, especially if we're consuming content online. Because the other month I saw an ad run by a very popular person and a very popular program targeting people who have corporate jobs, starting a business with no money. So start your business with no upfront cost.
Okay.
That's a lie.
Right. How could that be?
That's not true. In under any circumstances, even if you're a service-based business, starting things up from, like I did, from my dad's kitchen table in his condo in Vermont, like, there's always a cost, and there is always an investment in getting a business working and off the ground. And there's usually a multi-year time, energy, and financial investment in creating a business that actually works to get you paid.
Which is the goal, right? I mean, isn't that why we're in business?
There is always a financial, energy, emotional, effort level of investment to getting your business to have money coming in. Year one in my business, I invested all of the money I made back into the business because I was working full time. So it was a side hustle then. Year two, I quit my job. I didn't have a paycheck coming in, but John and I had an agreement that he was going to cover our living expenses. We were going to cut back, and he was going to cover the living expenses while I brought in what I could. And then by year three, we had an agreement around how much money I would be paying myself. But all of the monies that I earned in the business, years 1, 2, and a lot of what I earned in 3 went back into the business.
Well, let's talk about this for 1 second, because I think this is really the crux of what we're here to talk about. So let's take your example, which I think is a great example for a general example of someone starting a business. Okay. Let's all remember what the purpose of a business is. When we all talk about Apple, Microsoft, the biggest businesses in the world, what's the purpose? To make their shareholders money. If you think that any of these companies in this world are in business to, and I'll use Disney as a perfect example because we've been talking about this a lot. If you think Disney's purpose is to be a woke organization to make people miserable and to feel bad about themselves, that is not Disney's purpose. The purpose of business is to make money for your investors. That's it. And if you own a business, your purpose is to make money for yourself. You could have great intentions of doing other things and helping people and being kind and, saving people money. And that's wonderful. But the ultimate goal, the reason why you went into business to begin with, is to put food on the table. That's it. And it's okay to acknowledge that. So Tara, your example, why did you start your side hustle? Because the job you were in wasn't providing the money that you wanted. So you decided, instead of getting a better job by going to a recruiter and getting hired by a bigger company or a different company to pay you more, you said, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to start a blog, right? Because you started a blog, you started writing, you started putting your thoughts out there. And the purpose of that was to get people to read it so they can say, oh, I want to hire Tara as my personal coach and pay you money so that you can build a business and put food on the table.
It was way less strategic than that, to be fair, but that's how some of the pieces came together. Yes.
But ultimately the goal was to make money. Whether you read, so
Yes.
this is a thing that people.
Well,
need to understand too.
my goal was to leave a job that provided me with no flexibility to take care of myself and my own needs, that didn't value my strengths, where I felt underutilized. And I thought that I could do better
Right.
on my own.
Mm-hmm. And then you communicated that desire with someone in your life who was partly dependent on you. You didn't just decide to do this in a vacuum on your own.
Correct.
And say, I'm leaving my job, tough SHIT.
No, there was a lot of planning.
There's a lot of planning. There's a lot of communication, a lot of talking. I know when I went into business, when I took over Kreitzman and Kreitzman, when I went into and I bought out this business from my father and my uncle, there's a lot of communication I had to have with Phyllis about what would happen if something were to happen to me, what her obligation was, and also communication with attorneys about how to maintain my licenses, how to do all of the things that I need to do in order to run a successful accounting practice. It's not that you just wake up one day and become an owner and you don't have to learn these things. And you can't do it on your own. And you have to communicate your needs to other people that may or may not depend on you. And so that's, what I wanted to point out. And there's a third thing that I think is important to point out. You mentioned that all the money you've earned, right? The money you earned got reinvested back in this business, right? Mm-hmm. That's what you did in years 1, 2, and 3. So that's a perfect example, because I have to explain this to a lot of people. Just because you had to reinvest money does not mean it wasn't earned and it won't be taxed. Okay. And that's a perfect example would be dividends. Okay. A lot of us have stocks, mutual funds, ETFs where we get dividends. We reinvest those dividends, but we pay tax on those dividends. So your business is going to earn money in those first few years. Hopefully that earns money, and you will take money out, but there will be some taxes that you may need to pay, even though you've reinvested that money into the business. So these are the things that you need to communicate with professionals like me, or an attorney, or your husband, or your wife, or your uncle, or whoever that you trust, to communicate and talk about these things that are going to come up and how to plan for them. And I feel like that doesn't get touched on a lot. Everyone thinks you just open up a business and there you go. Poof,
I think that's a fair point. I think that we're missing the part where this doesn't happen in isolation.
Correct.
This does not happen in isolation. This doesn't happen solely in your little dream world, in your dream scenario, in your notebook. That we then need to go and have some very real, vulnerable, honest conversations about what we are and aren't willing to do. So, for example, we closed our first business and went bankrupt because I was not willing to live in my mother's basement. And that's pretty much like where we were getting, like we were going to lose the house if we didn't. That was my rock bottom. Like we had to keep the house. So we could do anything we want to do, but my rock bottom is keeping the house. There have been conversations where John took over the business. At the time, he didn't even own the business, but he was solely responsible for it. And he personally invested, I shouldn't say he personally invested, but we had to personally guarantee $1 million loan for equipment to update the manufacturing facility. Meanwhile, the business was in an ESOP, employee stock options, and the employees technically owned the business. We couldn't get leases through the business for the cars that they needed to go on service calls because the car company wouldn't give an ESOP a car lease. So I have 10 freaking Priuses in my name because the business needed the vehicles to operate the business. And if we didn't do those things, he would not have a business today, which we ultimately bought, and it is ours now. But it wouldn't be here without that capital investment. And what that looks like on our side is trade-offs. Right. Things like, we don't live in a fancier house or a fancier neighborhood, or we only have one house right now. Or, we make trade-offs in terms of our lifestyle, that it's something that we can afford, or that our lifestyle gets, we make really discerning choices around our lifestyle in economic times like this, because we need more capital in the businesses so they keep going. So, the business isn't not investing in the business. Tara isn't buying maybe the clothes that she wants to buy, or going on 3 vacations and she's only going on 1 vacation, because we need the money in the business.
I think what you're saying, and I'm going to sum this up for what I think I'm hearing you say, is that it's really important to understand what your goal is. And it's really important to understand where your boundary is around how much you're going to contribute. And it's really important to understand what you're not getting by reinvesting money into a business, or putting the Priuses in your name. Or, you have to understand that by doing that, it's going to preclude you from getting other loans. Or by closing a business, that's going to affect your life, because that's going to keep you from doing X, Y, and Z. And so I think it's important to understand, when you make a business decision, especially as a small business owner, what it is you're getting yourself into. And to really, I'm not saying take a million years to make a decision, but what I am saying is, if you find yourself in a position where you need to make a decision, that you feel that you need to make this decision immediately, that may be a time for you to take a step back and say, wait a minute, I need a day or 2 to think about this.
Learn how to ask questions. That's the other thing. Learn how to ask questions, because you have to. So here are just the facts, like in life and in business, because here's the thing. Working for somebody else comes with trade-offs too. I could very easily go back into the workforce, get a job as a CHRO, and I could make $250,000, $350,000 a year. And I could probably do the job with my hands tied behind my back, but I'd be fucking miserable. I wouldn't like it. It wouldn't feel creative. I wouldn't feel valued. I wouldn't have the flexibility and the work schedule that I have today. So I'm trading off, because I will tell you, I do not pay myself $350,000 a year. I'm trading off, right, Josh? I don't. He's kidding.
Debatable.
Debatable. Josh knows the numbers. So I'm trading off some income, personal income, for that, right? There's always this trade-off. But in anything, you're going to fail. You can lose money. You're going to disappoint someone. You're going to feel desperate. You're going to feel vulnerable not knowing. You're going to dip into scarcity. Somebody's going to perceive you to be a horrible person. You will need to take really big risks without any level of certainty. That's true whether you're working for somebody else, possibly, and it's 100% true in your business. So if those things are just fact and not fear, those are fact, they're going to happen. What do you need to know? What questions can you ask? Stop being afraid of looking silly.
Yeah, that's a huge one. A lot of times when I get involved with someone, I say, how come you didn't call me when this happened a week ago, 3 days ago? And the answer I got was, well, I didn't really want to bother you because I kind of felt stupid asking. I should really know. And I said, but we're working together. There's nothing stupid about it. You can't know everything, and you can't have the answer to everything. And I certainly don't have the answer to everything. But what I can tell you, and I can assure anyone, is that you'll never find the answer if you don't have the conversation. You will, if you have the conversation. I've had many times where I was talking with someone and we couldn't figure it out. And then about halfway through the conversation we were having, all of a sudden the answer presented itself. And we went, oh, that's a great idea. That's fantastic. Let's do that. But we never would have gotten to that point where we found the solution that we liked if we didn't go through the solutions we didn't like together.
Yep. So let's land this plane. Let's sum this up, because we started saying we wanted to have an honest, straightforward chat that I don't think people are having. I don't think people are talking about this. I think that people are, focused on how can you get more clients, and which is important. I'm not dismissing that, or how to make, how to get ahead of the algorithm, or we want everybody to think that everything is absolutely fine, and that we're on firm ground here with the economy, because everybody wants everybody to just keep buying. And I'm still not worried about the economy, for the record, for people who are listening to this and like, should we be concerned? I'm not concerned. This is a cycle. It happens. I've got clients who are making plenty of money. Josh has clients that are making plenty of money. Josh and I, our businesses are doing well. John's business is booming. It's really what you make of it. Honestly, it's what your skill set is going to make of it. And it's what you're going to make of it. Are you all in? Because let me tell you something right now, you have to be all in. There's no dabbling. Are you going to lean into, these are the benefits that go far beyond like money, but these are like all the reasons why small business ownership and working for yourself and being self-employed is awesome? Or are you going to doubt that? Are you going to continue to wonder, like, should I go back to work for somebody else? Because guess what? Your business isn't going to grow that way.
I want to add, beware of the easy quote. I'm quoting. You can't see my finger quotes, but I'm putting up finger quotes. Beware of the easy money. A lot of times we like to talk about investors. Oh, I'm going to do a safe note. I'm going to bring people in and convert them to equity at one point. I want money to come in to help them to have an investor. I'm giving up equity. I can do that. I promise this person that. Really beware of what you are giving up when you give up equity or investment in your business and easy money. I've seen a lot of times where people with lots of money showed up at the door of someone and said, hey, I'll give you $1 million to run your business and I'll leave you alone and let you do whatever it is you want to do. And the truth is, for $1 million, no one is going to give you money and leave you alone. No one is going to give you money and not expect something in return. So be aware of that opportunity that comes across, because tomorrow may not be a problem, but a year later could be a problem. Right now, perfect example, I have a client, gave away 10% of his business for $15,000. And in order to get back that 10%, it's going to cost them $75,000. So basically, they're stuck with a partner they don't want. They needed the money then. Now it's going to cost them almost $75,000 to get rid of that person. Just because. So I'm telling you to just be aware of the promises you're making and the conversations you're having, so that you don't give away the store and that you don't put yourself in a position where you regret because you were desperate.
So this is where I want to land with, if you're all in, learn how to learn how to ask questions, even if you feel stupid or silly. I'm always inviting people to ask me questions, and I'm always shocked at how few people take me up on the opportunity to, for free, ask me a question and have it answered, say on this podcast or in a piece of social content. And the last thing that I want to say is listen to experts. Hire advisors, hire mentors, ask experts. And let me tell you something. Everybody could be like, well, is she just saying that because she just wants us to hire her? I learned this from my dad, who was a very successful businessman. He's still a successful businessman for probably over 40 years, almost 50 years at this point. And he had a high school education, but he is probably one of the most agile learners I have ever met. He never stops learning. He reads, he hires advisors, he hires mentors. His accountant, his attorney, his, business colleagues and mentors were his ride or dies. He retired, started a consulting business, and then decided he wanted to start day trading and hired, I don't advise day trading. I'm just saying he decided that that's what he wanted to do because all of his money was already saved for retirement. But he hired a mentor, a Morgan Stanley investment banker who is teaching him for years now, like 5 years, the ins and outs of the market and margins and writing calls and dividends and all of that stuff. So make sure that you're really hiring and then listening to an expert. Fill your team with powerful people.
And let me add this. We started this conversation today where we were talking about how Tara and I are close friends, and I'm close friends with John, right? We see each other every week. We send each other memes every day. We talk about our good times and our bad times and all the things that friends do. But the truth is, we didn't really talk about this part of it, which Tara just brought up, which is super important. I pay Tara.
And I pay Josh.
My coach. And she pays me to be her accountant. And
John pays you.
Her advisor.
We're all paying you.
So this isn't just a personal relationship where we help each other out and, we're friends and we're like brother and sister. And, we came from the shtetl together. And so therefore we help each other. Paying for advice and hiring the right people is very important. And we all have family members that are willing to give us advice. We all have a mother-in-law that was an accountant at Markham. We all have a brother who is a financial advisor that's so quick to tell us when the advisor we decided to use is wrong and why don't we use him and all of these things. We all have these people in our lives. The truth is, you need to pay the person who you trust and who you will listen to. It's all nice to have family giving you advice and say, my uncle told me this, my brother told me that, my mom told me this. The truth is, laws change, things change, and you need the person who's up to date on that information to give you the best advice. And you cannot hesitate to pay them. It's got to be part of the routine.
I think that was the best part of the message. So I'm just going to let you drop the mic and we're going to end there. And we're going to say, thanks for coming on the show, Joshy. Thanks for coming on the show, Joshy. And we'll see everybody next week.
See you next week. Well, I won't, but you will.
If you found this podcast valuable, help us develop more bold leaders in the world by sharing this episode with your friends, colleagues, and other bold leaders. Also, if you haven't done so already, please leave a review. I consider reviews like podcast currency, and it's the one thing you can do to help us out here at the Bold Leadership Revolution HQ. We would be so grateful for it. Special thanks goes to Stacey Harris from Uncommonly More, who is the producer and editor of this podcast. Go check them out for all your digital marketing and content creation needs. Be sure to tune into the next episode to help you embrace your ambition and leave the grind behind.